trying to actually put my emails through to the system, so there was always the condition of the relevant where I'd be looking stuff about.
We haven't formed a cabinet. This is like a level group meeting.
Right, good evening everybody. Can I welcome you to the final Overview and Scrutiny Committee for this municipal year. My name is Councillor John Walker and I'm the chair of this committee, and Councillor Roy Lees on my right is the vice chair. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. If you're joining the meeting via Teams, please use the raised hand function on your iPad to indicate you wish to speak. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve any issues. If this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. Right, that's out of the way. Have we got any apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Dalton.
Right, thank you. Right, minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January and the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Performance Panel held on the 10th of March. Are those true records of those two meetings?
Councillor Riggett wants to speak.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to raise a note on both sets. First, on the first set, on page 6, where we were talking about special expenses, I believe Councillor Wilson agreed that we would have a members' briefing for all members on how that would work, but that isn't actually noted in the actions and in the minutes, and I'm concerned that if we don't note it in the minutes, that might not happen because he didn't seem over keen to commit to it.
Well, I mean, I think from the council meeting, I think quite a lot of people agreed that we should look into this in this next municipal year. So we'll put it down as some work to be done for next year. Okay?
Can I give some comfort? Mm-hmm. Just to confirm, we will organise a member learning session prior to the budget next time, and it will include special expenses. And as I understand, Louise Battington's going to do a briefing note on the joy, which is special expenses as well.
My only concern would be if we wait till pre-budget, it means we don't get a chance to understand it because the budget is effectively set already. But
yeah, we'll make sure it's done before the budget scrutiny meeting, yes.
Okay, thank you. And my point on the other one was similar. On page 151, which was the recent meeting, Councillor Bradley agreed to bring the performance-focused report for the property, markets and town centre sections back in 6 months' time, not 12. But we haven't minuted that, so I'm concerned it wouldn't be on the work plan to happen if we haven't made a note of it.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay.
Could I ask also then that the community safety partnership report with the data comes that recently arrived that we discussed? I think we were pledged that it would come through.
Right. Have we got any figures for that?
We can sorry, through you, Chair. We can ask for an updated report on community safety for an early meeting in the new municipal year.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right. Is it a true? Other than that, is it a true record of the two meetings we had on the 27th of January and the 10th of March? Have you a seconder?
Second those, Chair.
Thank you. Right, let's get on to the next item, which is declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. No? Okay, thank you. Right, we have with us, I think, Mr. Andy Hunter-Rossell. Is that correct?
Yep.
Are you there, Mr. Rossell? Hello?
Yeah, hello,
good.
Sorry, just muted myself. Hiya.
Hi. I think you're here to hear what we've got to say about cycling from the council meeting where we explained why we hadn't done a review of cycling in Chorley. We did say it would go to the Green Climate Change Committee for their next meeting. Unfortunately, they haven't met since the council, I think they're meeting next week, so they will be looking at cycling in due course. But we have got some thoughts on cycling from agenda item 9, pages 107 to 116, which we're going to bring forward because you're with us. So I think, Zoe, you're going to present
Yes,
this
Chair.
report.
Yeah, so if I present the report and then we can take any questions pertaining to cycling, is that the way forward? Yeah. Okay, so this is the, thank you Chair, this is the second report of the Sustainable Public Transport Task Group. Provides an update on the actions agreed, and obviously we're asking that the committee endorses the updates, the recommendations, and also the cycling project which is proposed as set out in the paper. So just flicking through the paper, it just reminds us what the recommendations were of that task group at paragraph 6. Just lists those there in terms of looking at public transport, tackling social isolation, working with different stakeholders, and the task group made 21 recommendations which form the basis of the table that's set out in the paper. I wasn't going to go through all of those 21 recommendations. The updates are there for all the committee to see, but I wanted to pull out a couple of points of particular interest. The first one being cycling. So from paragraph 10 onwards, the task group made a recommendation to establish a cycle task group to look at cycle opportunities and cycle routes in the borough. It is proposed that this is replaced with a cycling project which comprises of measures intended to achieve a number of key objectives which are set out there below, which includes working with our communities to develop a wider understanding of cycling in the borough and the aspirations and asks of our local residents and visitors, people that work in the borough. Use of social media, so this is use of communications to raise awareness about cycling, particularly thinking about changes to the highway code recently, and also raising awareness about sharing the space in terms of the road, etc., and the resources available in our borough. A key action as well was to engage with the county council, who obviously as the Highways and Transport Authority have responsibilities around cycling, and they have published a cycle strategy and a local cycle and walking investment plan, which includes a number of schemes for cycle improvements in the borough. So part of this cycle package of work will be for us, for my team, to engage with the county officers to understand how that's being brought forward, whether there's funding attached to those schemes and that strategy, and how we can work together to enable some of those schemes to come forward. Also working with some of our partners to develop an understanding about what else is available for cyclists around training, maintenance, and access to free equipment, security marking and so forth. And then also, finally, a big one around the local plan. So this is around active travel, and particularly cycling, and making sure that our new local plan, our new development plan, has features heavily in terms of cycling and taking that forward. So that is the package of work that's proposed for cycling. The second thing I wanted to tease out really was around buses, and this is around recommendation number 2. So one of the things that the task group felt strongly about was the franchising of buses, so the regulation of buses, and that we should, as a county, such as secure delegated powers like we've seen with combined authorities. We have engaged with the county council, the manager for public transport there, Andrew Varley, who has confirmed that the county's view on that is that it's not appropriate for the county, particularly because we're not a combined authority, but also because they feel strongly that a bus enhanced partnership is the way forward. And there has just been, on the 1st of March, that agreement that's about to go live on the 1st of April with the bus providers in the county. So what I'm proposing, Chair, is that in the next meeting, in the next report rather, I'll provide a bit more detail about what that plan will deliver for Chorley in particular, because it does talk about the integration of ticketing, multi-operator ticketing, which is one of the things that I think the task group felt strongly about. And I've not had chance, because of the lead-in for these reports, I hadn't had chance to really have a good look at that partnership agreement that our bus operators are going to enter into with the county to see actually what it will mean and whether it will actually tick the box in terms of what the task group wanted. So in terms of the rest of the report, I wasn't going to go through any of the other recommendations in particular detail unless any members have questions about them. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. On the regards to cycling, just for Mr. Hunter's thoughts, you've got here no longer item on page 113, item 20, establish a cycle task group to look at cycling, which we're going to do in this new municipal year, although it says here no longer appropriate, but we will do during the course of next year. And I've got a friend who was the vice chair of British Cycling for 5 or 6 years, who lives in Whittle, and he said he'd be delighted to come and talk to either a member training session and talk about cycling to the whole of the council, and come up with some recommendation which he feels could be appropriate for Chorley. So that will happen in the next municipal year. But I can only apologise. We found we had other tasks or other items we want to look at this year, and so that was put on one side, but it will be taken up next year. Have you any questions, Mr. Hunter?
Hunter Russell, yeah. A few. So are you saying it's going to be taken up as a task group next year? Because it says the recommendation there is for it to become a project. And then my question was, sort of, what's the difference? Does that mean there's going to be no members involved? It's just going to be sort of council staff running that, or how's that going to work? What does a project look like? Go on.
Zoe, do you want to answer what a project will look like? I mean, it's a question of scoping to decide how we want to look at, what we want to look at, and then we then go on from there, really. But have you got any thoughts, Zoe?
Well, my understanding was it would be a package of work that's set out as in the paper to be endorsed by this committee, but then it would be, because obviously I've only got a third monitoring report to be presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I can report next meeting in terms of progress on that package of work, but then I assume that it would be reported back to the Climate Change Working Group, where it would probably most comfortably sit in terms of reporting back to. Obviously, it is officer-led, that package of work, but we would still be answerable to members in terms of, you know, how the progress made, because some of them will generate questions. So, for example, one of the things that we're proposing to do is a survey of residents. Well, obviously, if we do a citizen-based survey, that's going to generate lots of questions and asks. Well, we need to do something with that piece of work. There'll be an outcomes paper, which will be presented to members in due course. So it will, of course, continue to be involved with members. But obviously, in terms of the work itself, obviously, that would be officer-led.
Thank you, sir. I mean, I can only just say that we haven't forgotten about cycling. It has been looked at with the Green Agenda Committee, and we will take it up further when we have their first report back next municipal year. But what we do next year is out of my control at this moment in time. We will have possibly new members on the committee who will have other ideas, etc., etc. But we have the first meeting in July when we set up the work programme for the year. So we'll see what comes out of that, really.
Sorry, Chair. Could I ask one further question there? That climate change working group is an absolute mystery to me. It's not on the calendar. It's not it's not put on YouTube like a lot of the other meetings. So I struggle to engage with that meeting. Is it?
Yeah. Yes, Ruth.
Hey, I might be able to help with that. Climate change working group is a working group, and therefore it's not a publicly accessible meeting. It's a meeting with members, but it's not a public meeting. Yeah.
But they
thanks.
do report back to Cabinet, don't they? Do they report back to Cabinet? Will in due course? No. All right,
due
okay.
course.
Yeah, no. Okay. But I mean, we will invite you, once we get some further discussions about cycling, we will invite you along. All these meetings are up to the public, so you'll be very welcome to put your thoughts into the meeting anyway. Okay. Thank you very much. Coming back, has anyone got any questions for Zoe on the transport recommendations? Yes. Sorry, I haven't seen you.
All right, I'm actually early doors of the next administration, hopefully going to make a recommendation that we do a deep dive exercise, like a rapporteur, exercise as far as cycling, the walking and cycling strategy that the government have, that Lancashire County Council have, and that we have, with targets set already. And I would also closely like to align it with other issues around child road safety within the borough. Chorley and West Lancs have got the third worst road safety figures for the whole of the UK.
I think it's a significant thing that perhaps we could discuss. I just think there needs to be a more proactive approach and engagement from the general public and from councillors in the whole issue about a strategy which is just as important as any other strategy we set. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to welcome Mr Hunter Rossall, if he's still listening. There is the item after this on the Green Agenda Committee, which may interest him as well. But I have got quite a few questions on this item, so if it's all right, I'll just ask two, and then we'll see if other members want to come back, and then we'll ask. So, first one's a pretty straightforward one. You raised in the report, so it's on page 107.2, about the online consultation we're running on cycle use. Have we got any sort of timeline from when we can expect that report to be presented to members? Will it go first to Climate Change Working Group or will it come to ONS? I'm not too sure. And then I'll just ask a second question, if I may. So pages 111 to 112, just over the page there, it mentions there was a meeting with Dial-A-Ride yesterday. I was wondering what the outcomes of that meeting were, if you've got them. Thank you.
Yeah, the second one, I wasn't at the meeting, so I can't comment on that. But in terms of the first one, if this committee was to agree with the package of work, we were planning on doing the citizen space survey sort of summertime, because obviously we currently have a live survey on the climate change strategy, and obviously we didn't want to have two surveys running tandemly, because obviously you run the risk of over consultation. So the plan was to go out sort of early summertime with the cycling survey, and then have a report sort of, I would guess, at September time, October time. In terms of where that would go, because I can't remember the dates in terms of my third monitoring report for this piece, for the overview and scrutiny of sustainable transport, depending on the timing, I could bring it back here, or I could take it to Climate Change Working Group, depending on the timings of it.
Thank you. James, any further? Any further questions? Yeah? Okay. Councillor Snape?
Yeah, just a quick one. On the point 9, the council continues to progress discussions with Lancashire County Council to take over the Chorley interchange. And I think it says not progressed, not appropriate due to viability. Is that on Chorley Council's part, or is that on Lancashire County Council's part? Because I know Lancashire County Council have never been massively keen on it. I just wondered whether or not Chorley had backed out of it or changed their mind or what, really. Thank you.
I can't answer that, Chair. That was just the information I was provided by a colleague.
I think Councillor Riggett might be able to answer.
Yes, Councillor Riggett.
If it helps, colleagues, wearing my other hat as Cabinet Member at County, myself and Councillor Bradley have had a number of discussions on this, and we agreed to wait till the outcome of the bus service improvement plan that the county made a bid for, to see what the government give us funding for, which parts of that, and then see what the options are from then. So, Councillor Snape, nobody's backed out of it, but nobody's moved forward yet, but we're in a happy holding pattern.
Chair, I wonder whether Councillor Snape might be able to answer the question about Chorley liaison last night, as she's the Vice Chair.
Okay. Councillor Snape? Any further to say?
Sorry, Councillor Snape, were you at Chorley liaison last night? Because Dial-A-Ride attended last night. Are you able to give an update as to what the discussion was? Is that okay?
Silence.
Were you there as well? Yeah. Actually, we had a presentation from Tracy from Dial-A-Ride, and obviously just explained due to limitations to the charity as far as finance. They were more a booking service for rides into town or shopping or wherever people want to go, rather than a responsive service. And I think they might possibly have that aspiration that they would like to have more capacity to deal in a more responsive way, particularly in the parishes. So the biggest drawback of that is they rely on volunteers, and there is a distinct shortage of volunteers. So I actually said that it was our duty to go to every parish council and get them to sign up and do some close partnership work with Dial-A-Ride to ensure that, at a local level we identify volunteers with driving, particularly. I think after the great work residents have done pulling together over Chorley Together, that we did at some stages have a surplus of volunteers wanting to drive vehicles. So, you know, we might go so far as training drivers up, you know, about health and safety and all the safeguarding risks and stuff, and hopefully support Dial Ride in their aspiration to grow and be a more responsive service.
Did they, just coming on to Dial Ride, are they happy with the grant that they get from the council, or do they say they wanted more money?
There was no comment. Obviously, Lancashire County Council and Chorley Council support the organisation. What can I say? They'll always want money to grow, but the thing is, you know, they've got the capacity to increase what they do at the moment if they get some volunteer drivers. So let that be something to achieve in the short term. And I just said to her, next time we see her, let's hope that all the parishes are signed up with an initiative to provide drivers.
True.
Be worthwhile.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Molyneux.
Thanks, Chair. Just to let Councillor Beddy know that Adlington Town Council are already working with Dial Ride because we want to use their services within the villages, and we have already, we have a couple of volunteers. One has been trained, but we've lost track of her, but another lady actually is volunteering, and Adlington Town Council have money in their budget to support Dial Ride and the voluntary transport scheme, so the parishes are already doing that.
Good, excellent.
Sorry, Councillor Molyneux, that the point was being all parishes should be engaging.
I know,
Okay.
but I'm just letting you know,
sorry, not
some
to
of
give
us
you credit.
already are.
Okay. Any further questions? Yes, James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just two questions. So obviously on that, my first question there, we can't expect to report really before September now, which is perfectly fine. I understand we want to get the consultation, but the report does say late spring, so, but I understand we're making adjustments there. So my final two questions, and then I'll shut up, is so pages 112 to 113, so point 16 and 17, it's looking at sort of car sharing, and the point 16 is about setting up a community, sort of trying and encouraging this in the community. It says there on the actions it's been delayed until HR have completed a review. Personally, I think that's a bit nonsensical, that if we're doing this in the community, it's nothing to do with what the council's HR practices are. In point 17, I can understand the reason for the delay. That's fine. Although I would just say if we could try and include members in that, because there's 42 of us, if we can potentially include members in any discussions about car sharing, we'll probably combine bigger than any of the departments, so most likely to have the most impact. And then second question, lastly, page 113.21, it mentions bike shelters for council staff. I was wondering what's been done so far. Have we sort of set any up yet? Have we been able to establish any interest for them? I know it says some steps will be taken later, but just where we're at now, really, to see where we're at with that. Thanks.
Okay. Any comments there?
I'm not sure about point 16. I need to clarify that with colleagues, because obviously part of my role in this project is conduit, so I'm not delivering a lot of these actions, so I rely on colleagues to provide me with the updates. So I need to clarify that and report back in terms of that number 16 as to why it relies on the HR policy review. In terms of the members, absolutely take that on board. You know, in terms of car sharing, we can certainly look at that, so we could add that to the action going forward. And then in terms of cycling provision, my understanding is that we've ordered pods for staff at Bengal Street Depot. Whether they're actually in place or not today, I'm not sure. I don't know. I know they've been ordered, but whether they're actually installed, I'm not sure. I can clarify that.
Okay. Any further questions? Well, can I thank you, Zoe, for presenting the report? There's a lot of recommendations, and to get them all cracking at the same time must be very difficult, but well done for getting it, partially going, and let's hope we can get it completed by the time we get the third report. Okay, thank you very much. You can, if you want to stop, you can do. If you want to go with pleasure. Okay. Right, I'm going to bring forward item. Where am I? The grass cutting Item 8 is the grass cutting and verge update. We've got the director here and a cabinet member, so can Adrian, can you give a verbal report, please?
Thank you, Chair. You requested an update to be presented to the committee about the plans for grass cutting and grass verges, but also you asked for any plans for the forthcoming year. You'd like to know about the number of people, if any, who have complained about the lack of grass cutting and verges, in addition to the wildlife areas that seem to be a point of contention with either people loving them or not loving them, Chair. So if I can give some, in effect, background information before I actually go on to some of the figures for the complaints, etc. Over the last number of years, there's been increased awareness and concern about biodiversity, the environment and green issues generally, and the Council has responded to these concerns. Members, particularly established members, would recollect that as far as the mini meadows and the wildlife corridors, they were first implemented a couple of years ago in April 2020, but the Council committed to our green agenda and supporting biodiversity, and we agreed as a Council to identify a number of sites, both for the wildflower meadows and the corridors. These sites aid biodiversity and they've been extended, and the forthcoming year, because they're becoming more and more popular, we've increased the number of sites that we're going to do. On the plus side, mini meadows have generated the most positive comments, which I'll come on to in a short while. However, the wildlife corridors, it's been a bit hit and miss with some negative comments as well as a lot of positive ones. However, in general terms, we've planted 16,000 wildflower bulbs in the corridors over the last 2 years to supplement any natural flowers, etc., that grow in the area. And members can be provided with the criteria used as far as both the mini meadow sites and the wildlife corridors. I think, if my memory serves me right, all members were circulated quite a number of months ago with the proposals for this forthcoming year, which have been increased in numbers, and as part of that report, the criteria, but I'm quite happy to resubmit that through Democratic Services anyway. But as far as grass cutting is concerned, the season actually runs from the 4th of April through to October, and it depends upon the weather, and the grass areas within the borough are cut on a 3-weekly schedule. The wildlife corridors are created in suitable areas and maintained as in the last 2 years, and there are currently proposed to be 52 wildflower meadows planned for sowing, in addition to the meadows created by Clayton Parish Council and Astley Village Parish Council. In terms of those corridors, Chair, we've adapted as we've gone along, and where, for instance, issues have been identified, I'll give you a number of examples. We removed tall dock plants on Chancery Road. We cut back further on the A674 in Councillor Whiffen's ward. We cut the swales every 6 weeks in response to high vegetation. That was in Councillor Riggett's and yourself's Chair's ward in Buckshaw. As far as going on to the statistics, and if you just bear with me, for 21-22, we saw a reduction of nearly 40% of grass-related service requests, i.e. that is people phoning the contact centre or being in contact with the contact centre to raise an issue with regard to grass-related service activities. The information that I've got, and I can quite happily supply you, is that in 2016-17, that was 304 incidents. In the current year, ending at the end of this month, that reduced to 127. When you talk about the number of complaints and its relationship to either the wildlife meadows and the wildlife corridors, out of 100 complaints that were received, only 4 related to either grounds maintenance, grass cutting or the corridor, and out of 722 general enquiries, only 6 related or made any comments about the service, about grass cutting or the operation of the wildlife corridors. Finally, Chair, in terms of when we do an analysis on the work or the comments made on social media with regard to the service that the council provides with regard to grass cutting and the wildflower meadows, etc., we received 115 compliments and 29 complaints. And some, obviously, of the comments, again, some of the complaints, should I say, are from people who, in principle, don't like the idea, whatever you do to them, of providing these corridors. But I'm quite happy if you would require any further information. I'm quite happy to supply it to members, but that gives you a flavour. And if anybody in their own wards have any issues with regard to grass cutting, you can contact the contact centre, raise a service request, or if it's a major issue, just send an email to the head of street scene, and if necessary, copy myself as the exec member, or ask him as the director. But there is a process to go through, but I hopefully I've given you a flavour of what the information you've asked for.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Anybody got any questions? Julia, have you got a question? No. Well, right. Yes.
Hi, sorry, mine was more of just a comment. Just because of a couple of complaints that had come through directly to councillors, on the climate change webpage of the website, or the Chorley Council website, there is now a section about the biodiversity benefits of the wildlife spaces that we do have. So if you do ever get any questions, you can direct them to the climate change page, because it does mention the biodiversity benefits of why we choose to leave certain areas and cut certain areas. Just if anyone has to, you can feed them through to our website if you'd like to.
Thank you for that. I've got one comment really to make, and I did mention that certain areas that I didn't feel were getting the cutting done they should do. I got the impression last year that some areas were cut in April and then weren't cut again until the end of the growing season, which by that time some areas were looking very overgrown and, you know, not very pleasant to the eye. Is that part of the routine now, that certain areas only have 2 cuts a year?
Through you, Chair, no, there's no preferential treatment given to any area within the borough. And as I've explained, that normally the schedule is a 3-weekly schedule. Now, there might be variants from that, and the obvious one is that if we have a complete heavy downpour, which makes the area completely boggy, unworkable, and we don't want to make have complaints to say you've dug it all up because you've tried to mow it, etc. I'm not aware, and I'll stand to be corrected, no area within the borough has got preferential treatment, as you suggest, Councillor Walker, and if you've got evidence, then by all means submit it so we can look at it, but I would be astonished if there is a gap between having one cut in April and then 6 months down the line having another one, because in the past, councillors have been very vociferous and raised it through the appropriate channels, and we react accordingly when we're aware of it. Asim, have you got any further information?
Just to clarify, Chair, are you talking specifically about the corridors in particular, or are you talking generally in relation to grass cutting?
Right. Yeah, I mean basically, I can't recollect last year. But I do know one particular area where it only had 2 cuts last year. And when I used to go, I mean, I see the team very regularly because I walk my dog around my area most days. And they just said that little stretch area wasn't going to be done until the end of the growing season.
So unless it falls in the programme of wildlife corridors, which is the case, so obviously...
No, this one's a wildlife
corridor. So if it's not a wildlife corridor, as the executive members confirmed, if it's not a wildlife corridor, then they should be cut every 3 weeks. So if there are cases where that isn't happening, then obviously if you can raise that, we can look into it.
Right. I mean, I will keep an eye on it this year to see that this patch does get cut more often. But last year it was left until October, and it did look a mess. That's why I was concerned. That's why I brought it up tonight to see if you'd changed any routines it had from previous year. That was all.
I can confirm, Chair, there's been no change in arrangements, and I know from yourself and a previous colleague in Whittle, you'll be first on the blower to raise any issues, but I can confirm I am not aware, it's not been brought to my attention of the information you've just mentioned. I'm not doubting that is correct, but according to my information, it's on a 3-weekly schedule, and if there's a major deviation from that schedule, that we will look into it. But I've not been made aware of anything on that score.
Yeah. Well, I'll make sure it happens this year.
And we can look at historic performance information because this is all computerised service. So when assets are maintained, they are completed online. So there's a visibility on that.
I'll take your word for it. It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be done on a 3-weekly basis.
If it is,
that'd be
I'm
great.
sure
You know, if that happens, that'd be fantastic. Anybody got any further questions? Yes, Julia.
I think there's a real opportunity really to do some community engagement around grass cutting and growing. And obviously we've got the opportunity with the climate change draft strategy document consultation going ahead at the moment. And people don't, you know, if questions are limited on that particular consultation document, you can always write in. I just think we need to progress away from having set behaviours around grass cutting and growing, because actually, you know, what do residents want, what do our communities want, and I think we should, as councillors, engage in and trying to find out, you know, how much local residents will get themselves involved in not maintain, that's the wrong word, sort of nurturing their own patches of green and grass, and that's the way forward really. We just need to be having that kind of discussions with our residents.
Oh yes, I agree.
You know, it shouldn't be set in stone that this is what we do every year. We cut the grass at a certain time or whatever. And actually, largely, I think Lancashire County Council have adapted their habits around only cutting grass if it's because of safety reasons. You know, there's just real scope for just doing things differently.
I agree. Councillor Snape.
Sorry, my internet went funny before. I apologise. I just had a point to note really regarding the mini meadows. I know Chris, I think it was Chris Walmsley sent out a list of the locations. I think it was at the back end of last year. But I know June and I provided a number of additional suggestions for Adlington that he was going to look into, and I don't think we've had any feedback on that. The other one was that we didn't actually get the criteria for the sites until after that list had been sent, so it might be worth sending members the criteria that you come up with for the sites before sending out the list. And the third thing was we have a lot of jigsaw housing association land in Adlington that June and I suggested would be good locations for mini meadow sites. But obviously that's not within the council's gift, but I don't know if there's any opportunity for partnership working with organisations like Jigsaw for schemes like that, because it does seem a shame because there's lots of grass and things that aren't really doing anything. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Snape. In terms of the specific suggestions or sites that you've mentioned, I'll get the head of street scene to chase it up and respond accordingly, and we'll recirculate the list of current sites proposed as from April, along with the criteria for both the mini meadows as well as the wildlife corridors. We have increased the number of sites, but there might have been valid reasons why certain sites might not have been able to be progressed as suggested, but I'll get them to chase it up and reply directly to yourself, Councillor Snape, as well as other members of this committee.
Thank you. Anybody got any further questions? Yes, James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thank you for the verbal update, Council, although it was very comprehensive. And I'm really encouraged by the Wildlife Corridor programme. I think it's an excellent policy that this Council introduced in order to protect the biodiversity of our borough. If individual members would prefer to send petrol or diesel fuelled lawnmowers to go and cut through bees and butterflies, that's entirely their prerogative. But for myself, I'm quite pleased. And when we have individual issues, I think I was reassured by the conversation we had earlier. You know, we'd had one resident raise potential query about the wildlife corridor in our ward. Conversation we had explained the sort of process, and I was actually I came away from that even more confident about the programme we have. So I would just encourage any members who have individual ward issues to use that sort of route rather than potentially bringing it to a meeting, because you can get a response a lot better, as I did. So thank you.
Any further questions? If not, can I thank you for being this evening. I look forward to the grass being cut every 3 weeks. I will keep my, well, I do keep my eye on it because I'm out most days with my little dog. So, and I see the team. They do a very good job, I must admit. It's just that this one area wasn't done last year, and this is why I was querying it, really.
And you can get the reassurance, Chair, that you won't have any preferential treatment. Neither do I, as an executive member, have any preferential treatment. But we'll come back to you, John. Okay. And just to reiterate what Councillor Nevitt has said, we can only react to things that's brought to our attention. That's right. And you don't need to wait for a committee meeting. You can use the appropriate channels. But I look forward to the performance panel when we're next invited to see if there's any more themes that crop up.
Well, you'll have had a couple of months to get the grass cutting under control. We hope for some dry weather anyway to dry everything out before you start cutting anyway. Thank you very much. Give to pass. We want to thank you. You, lady, are you stopping? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Right, we'll go back to the early part of the meeting, which we've missed out on, and that was the scrutiny of the Executive Cabinet meetings. 4th of February and there's one in March here, isn't there? 9th of March. Any... Got any questions about those? And then we'll, if you haven't, we'll go on to the... Sorry, yes, James.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, thanks, Chair. I don't know if anyone can answer it, but on page 10, under the decision, the last point, we were talking about allocation of reserves and 260,000 going into the Green Agenda Fund to... is that increasing the current fund? Because then on the monitoring report, page 116, that says the climate change budget is increased to 760,000, which again would correlate with that increase. So it's, I don't know if they're two separate budgets or if it's a case that we've replenished it, as I originally thought was at the budget. So any spend last year was being replenished from reserves, but then, like I say, the monitoring report on page 116 saying we've increased it on top of the £500,000. So if we could clarify that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yes, Zoe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a top-up. So the idea was it brought it back up to 500, but actually that top-up will be a separate programme almost in terms of the investment items. So there's 3 specific items that programme is aimed to deliver, 3 potential items that we're exploring. One is green bus stops, the second is cycle infrastructure, and the third one, I'm looking at my colleague, I can't remember what the third one was.
Bus stops and bike shelters.
And EV charging, yeah. So those are the 3 things that we're looking at, because the idea is that particular amount of money will be used to deliver tangible climate change related infrastructure of some type, but it is a top up to the 500 and it is a one-off.
Okay. Yeah, I think when you did the budget, you found you had a bit more money, and so you gave it to the green agenda rather than something else, if I remember rightly. Okay, thank you. Right, we go on to the next item, which is item 8, notice of executive decisions. Now, there's loads of executive decisions, and I always say, if there's any decisions that are going to be made in the next few weeks or months, please let me know if you're not happy with them, and we'll look at it further through the scrutiny. What we're going to do, from the meeting we had at 6 o'clock, we decided we're going to get the monthly decisions sent to all scrutiny members, or all members of the council, the first week of the month. Yep. And then if there's any of those that you're not happy with, and we'll say the decisions, you'll have the officer's name by the side of the decision. So if you have any queries, please speak to the officer. If they can't give you an answer, I'm certainly going to put you on to the cabinet member who must be able to give you a final decision. So that should happen. Are you going to do this in April or the next municipal year? Or
No,
from April.
Yeah,
very good.
on the end spot.
Okay. So that will also cut down also the number of pages on the scrutiny. So getting them all in future.
That is a question, sorry, through you, Chair. The document is obviously reproduced on the agenda for you, but as we were discussing in the training session before, because it's a live document, it's updated almost on a daily basis. Do you want to still receive the papers, the paper copy reproduced, or would you be happy just to have the link? Because the link takes you to the live document, it's not printed on paper. It's just so it's up to members whether you would prefer to.
I think previously up to this year we've always had the link, haven't we? And then we could look at it at our own leisure really, rather than pages and pages that you can hardly see anyway. Anybody got any comments to make about it? Yes, Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The link, I understand why the link is a good idea, is being proposed, but how do we justify what we looked at from a scrutiny perspective when you look back relatively? Because we can't see what it said at that point when we had a meeting 6 months ago on the plan. How would we capture that? Would be my only question. I mean, I scroll past the pages and use the link too, but from.
It's a decision for members as to whether they want to keep it makes no difference massively to us. Happy to leave it as it is if that's what members want.
I just say as long as we're not printing it all off. Thank you.
Right. I mean, we discussed this for half an hour before, and we keep discussing. We'll put the new system into practice and just see how it goes, and we can report back in July when we have our first scrutiny meeting.
I don't know if Councillor Morley wants to say something. She's taking
No, I'm all right. No, no question.
Right.
I just put my video feed on for a change.
All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to. Oh, sorry, James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just so that I am actually raising a question about executive decisions. Pages 32 and 33, there's 2 decisions there. I was wondering if we could get either more information presented to this committee in due course. So the Clean Air Strategy, I was wondering if we could have an update on that. I know we'd had a public consultation, and of course it's related to the air quality monitoring that we're doing on an annual basis. If that strategy's been sort of, if there's been an update to that. And then the COVID memorial consultation, I remember from, of course, it says December 2021, where we're at with that as well, if we could potentially see what's happening there. Yep, thank you.
I'm certain, Zoe, after the consultation, you will presumably a report will come to your group and probably cabinet in due course. I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, the air quality strategy is actually owned, I think it crosses two directorates and teams, partly my team, but also partly environmental health. But in any case, there will be a report of that consultation and an update of that action plan. Now, we can bring that to this report, or this committee rather, or we can report back to Cabinet in due course. Happy to do either of those things.
Right, okay. Okay, James?
Yeah, I'd just say, seeing as I've requested it, would be able to. If it's going to Cabinet, that's fine, but if we could come here as well, just so that that's answered, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Right, we'll move on to item 7, which is health scrutiny update. Now, who's giving the update?
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Just for members' information, Councillor Hilton, who's the representative for this, was unfortunately not very well during that meeting. So the minutes have been enclosed with the agenda. He said there's no update to present. But what we would propose is, if you have any queries on the minutes, if you let us know, and we'll feed it back to Councillor Hilton, he can report it to the next meeting. Thanks.
Okay. I've only one query. At the last meeting, we were asking whether we could have a scrutiny committee for South Ribble and Chorley to be brought forward to look at health issues in Chorley and South. Is that going to start happening for next year, next municipal year?
Yeah. I know there was discussions around the proposals relating to the hospital and changes to the hospitals. And as I understand it, they're not at a point for us to scrutinise yet. But as proposals are developed, then yes, it will be the focus of a joint scrutiny.
We've noticed this week I've noticed on Facebook there's an item that there's consultation going on for a new hospital, isn't there? I was just wondering if somewhere on the line we could get more information about it, how to get involved, etc., etc. It just appeared on Facebook this week, out of the blue, really. So I was wondering if anybody from the county knows more about it than we do here. James, have you anything to?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I was just going to say I've read the report, and the next meeting on the 22nd, so in 5 days' time, they're discussing this new hospitals programme. So I don't know if there's any work we can do to see if they'll allow other members of the council to attend, because looking at the minutes, they've got the co-opted members from presumably the partner councils that could, there might be other observers who can attend, because this is quite an important piece of scrutiny that, you know, we see it on the doorstep. We don't get to scrutinise health care providers enough. This is the only opportunity we might get. So if we can send more members, that would be ideal, I think.
But reading the reports and minutes and what have you, it doesn't seem to get to the nitty-gritty of health in any particular area. To me, the scrutiny at the county doesn't seem to be doing what it should do, really, but that's my opinion. But it would be good if we could get more information about this hospital, whether it's a member learning session early in the new municipal year, I don't know, but if you can look into it for us anyway.
Am I right to respond?
Yes, yeah.
We can certainly ask. I know who the contact is at LCC, so I'm not sure. I don't know if the meetings are web streamed. I mean, all public meetings are web streamed, certainly at Chorley Council, so even if you're not able to attend physically, you might be able to watch it on YouTube. But certainly happy to ask the question and come back to you. In terms of the member learning session, we did have a member learning session from our Health Our Care previously, and happy to see if we can get one of those, because I think it would be something that all members would be interested in. So happy to investigate that.
Yes, Councillor Berry. Julia.
Yeah, just to point out that next Tuesday I'll be substituting County Councillor Kim Snape at the meeting, and Councillor Hilton will be attending. It's not a hybrid meeting, so people will not be able to participate on Teams, but obviously it is web streamed.
Right. I suppose yes, Councillor Ruggett, yes.
Don't look on YouTube, because unfortunately County Council doesn't use YouTube. Don't ask me why. You have to go on the council's website, find the committee, follow the link through to hosting things. So it's not as easy as it should be. But
so do we get a report? Will we be able to get a report from that meeting as what's happening with it?
I'll probably be asking the question is when we're going to scrutinise their shortlist for the new hospital build and have some involvement at Chorley level, district level.
Right.
Because obviously it's a process of consultation that will go ahead even during PERDA.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
how long is the consultation? Is it 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, do we know?
No, I'm not sure on that.
Councillor Snape might know. She's
Oh,
Yeah.
Councillor Snape, do you know anything about it?
Sorry, yeah, I mean, Julia's touched on most of what I was going to say, but I'm a bit surprised at the officer's comments about the proposals not being in a state for us to be able to scrutinise at the moment, because my understanding from the new hospitals programme team is that basically they've produced a shortlist and that they want as much stakeholder involvement as possible and that they welcome it because that's what they fell short on last time. So now is the opportunity to have our say because they've produced a shortlist that will shrink even further, and if we don't have our input now, then the moment will be gone. And that's what Health Scrutiny are discussing on Tuesday, you know, feedback on those four suggestions on the shortlist.
Yeah, but I mean,
Thanks.
presumably, Councillor, if people only know about the areas they're going to, they're talking about building a hospital, we haven't a lot of time to get responses in if they're discussing it on Tuesday. There must be a 6-week period where we can get the public to have their views really. It's only just appeared on Facebook.
Yeah, but we should be writing to them as Chorley Council, whether it be member learning or overview and scrutiny, and maybe having a one-off meeting or something to formulate a view on, because they want as much involvement from councillors and the public as possible, because that's where our care fell short, because they ignored the public. But I do think that we should be writing to them, and if they say no, then it's their doing, isn't it? At least we can say that we've tried to have our view known by them.
Well, true, I agree. I mean, unless we know more details about it, it's very difficult to make any comments at all, isn't it? So if we can organise something, that would be good. For all members, not necessarily the scrutiny committee, all members.
I must apologise, it's not something that I'm involved in or know anything about, so I'm happy to defer to your knowledge, Councillor Snape, and happy to take it away as an action that we get involved.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's one glaring thing in the minutes, and it's on page 91. And to the best of my knowledge from reading that, not a single person from Chorley was at this meeting on 1st of February, regardless of party persuasion. And I know Councillor Hilton couldn't attend, and that's not a problem at all. I understand why he couldn't attend, but to the best of my knowledge, our health lead is sort of shared between Councillor Hilton and Councillor Margaret France.
That's right.
If I just finish, if she could have been able to attend, or I know in this case Councillor Snape couldn't attend either, that's perfectly fine, but we haven't got a member at all from Chorley, and if we're wanting to scrutinise effectively, we need to clean up our act a bit. So I don't know if Democratic Services can do a bit of work and just sort of establish whether members can attend a week beforehand or not. I know mistakes happen at the last minute where you can't, there's a traffic accident or something, but if we can try and make sure someone is there, I know Councillor Berry's going to be there next Tuesday, so that's sorted. But yeah, it's just like I say, there's no one there, and we've got a brilliant hospital in Chorley. We needed someone there to stand up for them. My second point would be, it says on the future topics on page 100, the various things that the Health Scrutiny Committee will discuss in the future, things like they'll have the County Council Champion for Mental Health. I think a discussion with district council leads on the same portfolio would be really useful. So I don't know if there's any sort of scope. I know I'm the champion at Chorley to do that. I'd love to be involved in that. Again, the Community Mental Health Transformation Programme, looking at early intervention and social prescribing, things that I've been working on in Chorley, but I'd benefit from hearing the county side too. So if we can see if there's any scope for more district involvement there, I think other councils would have similar, portfolios that they'd be interested in. So if we can sort of work with county to get invites, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Trevor.
There's a very...
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it was Terry Brown's funeral on the 1st of February. I think that's why nobody attended from Chorley.
Right. Thank you, Trevor.
Very fundamental issue was brought up by Councillor France at the last meeting, namely the changes in the funding of the NHS regionally. And what I'd like is some information on exactly who is actually funding the local NHS at the moment. We're moving towards what they call an integrated care system that stems from Lancashire all the way up to Cumbria. It was supposed to be on tap, but it doesn't appear to be fully in place now. They're actually shutting down the commissioning groups, the Preston, Chorley and other commissioning groups. Where are we at in relation to the administration of the finance of the NHS in this area?
Well,
does anybody know?
You're quite right. Where are we at? We don't know, but we haven't got the opportunity to find it out. You know, it's we can't do a health scrutiny of South Ribble and Chorley. The scrutiny at county doesn't seem to look at the finances of the NHS anyway. So we're just in the air about it, really. And it might well be to have a member training session in June talking about the NHS and get more information. We had one about 2 years ago, didn't we, where I think 3 or 4 of the top hierarchy at the NHS came and we asked questions and everything. We had a good hour session. But so we should do another one and find out more about it.
If I could just come back on another point. The issue of the building of the new super hospital or whatever is apparently back at the planning stage, which we were informed last time. It has come that they've got a new shortlist, but fundamental questions seem to be being asked. Have we got a site to build one on, even if it was actually decided to put one in this area? It's absolute chaos at the moment.
Well, I agree. I mean, as I said before, we've only just heard about this week. So it's a question of getting involved to find out how to object or make our comments through the NHS. But we haven't got enough information to make our comments at the moment.
Can I just answer Councillor Novet's other question?
Yeah.
Is that okay? You were asking about borough representation at county. So the council nominate, it's a group nomination, who attends the health scrutiny, etc. We can approach them and ask for additional representation, but it is for if you aren't able to attend a meeting, the substitutes are expected to arrange their own cover. It's not something that Democratic Services would get involved in. But happy to ask for additional representation, but it would be a county decision. But how many representatives are allowed from each borough?
Okay. Any further questions? I say we'll try and get more information if we can. Yes, Julia.
Yeah, unfortunately we seem to be bereft of information, bereft of scrutiny, and that's why at the last scrutiny meeting I was actually asking for this group, this committee to support holding the joint scrutiny committee meeting. We've got a committee that's established, it's constituted for this year, and it's not met. It's not met actually since it was set up, and I just think we shouldn't be in this situation. There's a real appetite just from listening to people, members today, and I think that we should seriously consider the meeting happening, but I need the support of the membership of this committee.
I mean, I brought it up at the last meeting about having a joint South Ribble and Chorley Health Scrutiny Committee. It would appear it isn't moving on. What I have to do, I'll take it up with the Chief Exec and just see if he can move this on to get it cracking, really. I do think we should be discussing the health of residents of Chorley and South Ribble.
Can I just...
Yeah.
Sorry. I think we ought to move it forward. I agree with you, and we'll get something organised.
Okay. It'll happen in the next municipal year when we'll have a new committee, new members, etc., etc. Okay, right, we'll move on to item 12 now, which is the report on the task and finish group for Select Move. I think that's you, June, isn't it?
Well, yes, but I'm going to defer to Sarah because unfortunately I couldn't attend the last meeting because Mother's been ill.
Oh dear.
And I was all tied up with that. She's still not right, but we're getting there.
Right.
So I'll defer to Sarah because she chaired the meeting very ably. I've got a very good substitute there.
Very good. Sarah?
Hi, thank you. So we met on Tuesday,
Right.
and there was representatives from the housing partners who was at the meeting. It was a well-informed discussion, and that's about it, really.
So how far have we got with the looking at Select Move? Are you near a conclusion to what recommendations to the Cabinet?
I think we're halfway there. We're going to have another meeting in April. Can I just defer to June if that's okay?
Right.
Thank you.
So presumably you should be reporting to the Cabinet, what, July time?
Can I defer to
We
June?
may, sorry.
Yeah.
If I could come out, we may, I don't know. It depends. There's a lot of things that are up in the air, really. We're still waiting to get in position a Select Move coordinator.
Right.
Who we would like to speak to as part of the process. And we've got a consultation with Select Move customers to go out and come back. So whether it will be done by July or not is, you know.
Right.
Some people don't seem to think there's an issue with Select Move that we're talking to. We disagree.
Yeah, well,
so
it was the main task.
How long is a piece of string now?
Yeah, it was the main topic we wanted to look at this year, and you've got to do a thorough examination. It's no good skimping it, so
No.
we'll have to be patient until you come up with the final report.
Yeah, thank you, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. All right, yes, sorry, Sally, you're going to give us a report on the green agenda?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the third monitoring report for the Green Agenda recommendations. I'm just going to jump straight in. So we'll go straight into starting from paragraph 12. Overall, we had a total of 23 recommendations from ONS. A total of 13 actions have been completed. We've got 3 actions that are complete but awaiting approval, so the point of writing is done. And then the 7 remaining actions are long-term ongoing actions that couldn't be completed within this time because they are so far extending. One of the main pieces of work that we've done since the last monitoring report is the climate change strategy. That's now into draft. It's out for public consultation at the moment. So please spread the word. All of the recommendations in this that haven't been completed or are still ongoing have been integrated into the actions of that climate change strategy. And they're already integrated into the climate change programme as well. So anything that's not finished has been moved on and it will continue to be progressed and monitored through the climate change working group as well. Over the page, the next tables, I'm not going to mention all of them, I'll just mention the ones that have had those major progressions since the last report. The first one is number 1, to undertake work to map and calculate the Council's carbon footprint. In Appendix 1, we've got the carbon footprint report. That's the 2019 report. 2019 is the baseline for all councils now because it's pre-COVID, it's before anything changed. That's your standard baseline. So that's a public report as well. It'll be finalised due to anything that happened during the public consultation, but that's basically ready to go. So within that report, you could see that the council carbon emissions is 1.6 million kilograms of CO2e for 2019, and the borough was 241 kilotons of CO2. So it's quite significant, but now that we have that baseline, we can start now moving forward. We've obviously got a new officer, our carbon and air quality officer, and he will start monitoring it yearly now, so we can hopefully start to see those decreases year on year. Okay. And then over on to the next page. The next one is recommendation 6. This is obviously what I quickly mentioned. We do now have that new officer, which is our carbon and air quality officer. So they're shared 50% between the air quality monitoring and then the carbon and decarbonisation monitoring as well. So you do now have 2 dedicated officers in the council for this green agenda and climate change work. Okay, and then recommendation 8. This does tie in quite a lot to recommendation 16 as well, so the wording is quite similar, so I'll just cover them both in this. So that options paper, that is a big piece of work, that's a major piece of work that's noted in the strategy, and that discusses the feasibility of those decarbonisation efforts that we can do internally and externally as well, and anything that's moving out of that too. We will be engaging with the universities. We do already have contacts through them, so we can get any emerging technology as well. So that'll be coming through the regular monitoring systems as and when it's ready. We are obviously working towards the decarbonisation of the council. So our new officer and myself, we are working towards an asset decarbonisation action plan, and that'll be based off feasibility work that'll be completed on our other assets. We have already done the town hall, but we do need to do that feasibility for everything else already. All right, and then over the page again. Recommendation 13, this was to promote the contribution of the green plaque for buildings. When we did some research with the business engagement team, we've obviously seen what's common and what has the biggest engagement avenue with this type of work. Most of them commonly link to business accreditation as well. So we've actually linked this one with recommendation 21. So you can see the draft of what we've got in Appendix 2 already. Following the traditional standard, we did choose to leave it quite open. Rather than having very specific questions, it allows for it to go out to a greater degree of businesses and to different buildings. Obviously, if you have it quite narrow, you can only have a specific type of businesses that can go in framings. It can go small or larger, whether they do or don't own the building, as well into what type of building it is. That's currently with our Crowberry consultants. We've worked with them before for decarbonisation. They're running through it and they're going to be our sample test to see if it's effective. And we can tie that into our already existing awards ceremony as well. So there's already a good avenue to feed that in straight away, which is really good. All right. And then 16 on the next page, the investigation of renewables. As I said, that did tie into an earlier one, but we did quickly note the decarbonisation work that we've already done. One big piece of work which will be going to council in April is the decarbonisation of the town hall, and approval for that. So that's incoming. So just hold off for that one. And then 18 and 19 on page 122. These are quite similar, so I've just integrated them together. The first one was to establish a networking group for the community. Obviously, going out into the community, we have engaged with a lot of community groups that are already existing. We have high schools, primary schools, the Inspire Youth Zone, businesses, the Sustainability Church Network and Green Living Chorley as well. Most of them has been engaged with. There isn't currently a lot of appetite for there to be one led by the council that integrates them all. They all do their own work depending on what they can and can't do. Obviously, I've been one officer for the majority of time, which has limited the amount of engagement that I can do. And these function really well. We engage with them to a degree when they ask us to, and we do try our best to support them as and when they ask. And then we obviously do have our business event, which was really successful. We held that in November. So that reached capacity. It was fully booked. And the next one will be held again in November, which links into 19. And then we'd also have that links on the webpage, which we had previously. All right. And then the final one was just recommendation 23, which was the letters from the leader of the council. These have been drafted, they're in appendix 3, so there was a lot of appendices in this one. The first one was the one that the leader has already sent, just for an example of what was previously sent. The other ones, they are a little bit more updated as to what we had previously. They were delayed slightly because we were expecting a lot of strategies and a lot of legislation to come through, obviously following COP26 and that kind of thing, and the levelling up paper. So these papers more discuss the gaps, especially relating to Chorley, that we're missing and that we feel that we need here to be able to reach our climate change goals. So yeah, they're obviously still approval They're just drafts at the moment, so they're not quite ready to go yet, but following approval, they can be sent out. So yeah, that was everything from me. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. There again, there are lots of recommendations which are going on all the time. But I mean, as regards climate change, this is going to be an ongoing thing year after year after year. Can I just ask a question on paragraph 18 or recommendation 18? You say you're having meetings with primary schools, eco group. Is that all the primary schools of Chorley or some specific ones?
So at the moment, the ones that have engaged with us there's 3 different ones so far. It depends on their area most of the time, so they're normally a couple of wards put together, and they've all been digital so far. Most of them were normally surrounding COP26. We've had another 2 that have followed on since then, but rather than overload it with, I think there's over 40 primary schools in Chorley, so rather than overload it, they have split up, either by church or by what's close to them. So there are 3 at the moment.
Yes, I mean, we've been looking at the school where I'm a governor, but to get it eco-friendly all the way through, the costs are astronomical. So things can only be done very, very slowly. Are there any grants available from the council for schools?
Yeah, so there is the public sector decarbonisation scheme. Obviously, schools are, as a public sector, such as us. If you're happy to, you can give my email if you'd like, I can help them. There's been another school, St Lawrence's, which is near the town centre. They applied for the same grant as well and were successful, so I can certainly provide links and support any consultants that they need for that type of work.
Sounds interesting. I'll have words with you. Yes, Ron.
Yeah, thanks. Item 40, paragraph 14, where we talk about discussions with local housing providers. I just know that last year, when I was the council's representative on Jigsaw, when this was brought up about carbon neutral, we were told that it was too early to meet the 2030. They were working on a longer period because they said the gas boilers might have changed by then, so there was no point in replacing them now. So I can't understand why they're now talking about complying with 2030.
So with relations to the 2030 goal, there are a couple that are willing to try to work to it. 2030 is a legal statutory requirement for the EPC bands of housing, which they will legally have to meet, so that was a change in legislation. So they are working towards the 2030 goal of the improvement of fabrication, so the insulation. It needs to be at least a band C, which I believe most of them in Chorley don't meet as of yet, unfortunately. As I'm aware of, none of them have the 2030 goal. The wider government goal is 2050, which is what they're working towards. None of them are working towards net zero for 2030, unfortunately. It's only the fabrication that they're working for.
Okay,
looking at action 8, in terms of air quality, and pardon me, but you're mentioning technology I don't understand. Are there reports of different levels of carbon in different parts of the borough, or are we pretty much standard throughout the borough?
Are you so with air quality of CO2?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've obviously changed the locations of the NOx tubes, which are you'll see them sometimes, the small little tubes on the side of like lampposts and that kind of thing. They're done on an annual mean basis, and we need I'm trying to think of a better word for this, like the compensation numbers from DEFRA, which we currently don't have yet. So it's not publishable data yet, unfortunately, for the previous year. When it is publishable, it will obviously make everyone aware of it, so that you can know. And that will be, so we have over 40, so you'll see those different levels in different areas. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob. Any further
that's
questions?
fine.
Neville?
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Chair. So I've got 3 questions, if that's all right. So first one, page 122.18. Sort of the discussions we're having with environmental community groups, including a networking group. I think members of Climate Change Working Group would be really happy to take part in these sort of conversations. You know, conversations I've had with the social prescribing team, for instance, have said one of the things we lack as a council is actually how to engage with these groups, because when officers do find the time to go to them, it's not the right format because it's seen as the council taking over a project, and it's on the flip side of that, the council like, we don't have the time to involve ourselves, that's why we're having the community do this for us. However, what members can do is be the intermediary, in a sense that they can provide the insight into what the council's doing and can potentially lead in their own communities, while at the same time taking questions from members of these groups, because my understanding would be that many of these groups would want to know what the council's doing on the environment, and on the flip side of that, members would actually get a lot of ideas from these groups about how we can improve and take that back to Climate Change Working Group. Probably something we can take to the council more widely, but that's a place to start. Point 19, of course, is fantastic that the business event was successful. I know you've said there that there's a questionnaire going out to all the businesses that took part, but what was the kind of feedback we got on the day? What are businesses looking for? Because presumably many of them need council's grants to help with decarbonisation. Did we get a flavour of that at the event? And lastly, it was just on the letters. So pages 142 onwards. Definitely agree with sending them. I agree with that we're punching home very similar points. It's a really useful way, but the letters really do need redrafting, because some of it, it really does need proofreading, to be honest. So, for instance, page 142, climate change is unequivocally due to human activities. It could be changed to unequivocally caused by human activities. And then further down, Chorley Borough has specified requirements to ensure the mitigation and adaptation of what. It's quite unclear, the language there. You know, there's a few grammatical mistakes in the others. I'm not going to be a teacher today. But for instance, Chorley being a rural area of the north, I'm not convinced by that. I know we're more rural than a city centre setting, but we are surrounded on all sides by major metropolitan areas. So I think that misleads the character of Chorley a little bit, particularly for some of these, you know, this is going to ministers in Westminster who've never seen the north, frankly, so they'd get quite a shock by calling Chorley rural, as much as we love our outlying villages. So I think that just needs to be changed. Yeah, so there's a few sort of grammatical errors, but apart from that, the letters look great, and I look forward to them being sent out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Do you want Sally to respond? I think Sally's happy to respond to the questions.
Yes. Sorry, Sally.
Yeah, sorry. It was so the first one about the members obviously partaking. We can certainly go back on that and we can figure something out, and we can talk about it at the Climate Change Working Group if that's okay with you. And then regarding the business event, a lot of it was about how they could decarbonise. We obviously did have different points, so we went on about EV charge points, about how to calculate the carbon footprint. That went down really well. We had someone from the university there to discuss that and how they can do it themselves, which was really interesting. A lot of them were interested in grants. We do have the grant page, which they obviously weren't aware of, so we have gone out through the Attain email for businesses as well about how they can get grants for different things. You can tell they want to do things, they just aren't sure how to move forward. So the questionnaire that's out, it does ask them what they'd like to see next time as well, because obviously we kind of went in the dark and did everything last time to get an idea. So hopefully the next one will get that greater flavour based off the answers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hunter, do you want to ask a question?
On Action 18, I was a bit disappointed to read that it says there's been engagement with Green Living Chorley. So I'm involved with Green Living Chorley, and I've contacted the council several times to see if they will meet with Green Living Chorley and present to us about what they're doing. This was obviously before the climate strategy consultation went live. Obviously, there's now a way for everybody to engage, but that immediately establish a networking group. That immediately referred to sort of February 2020, I believe. And there is still no way for the vast majority of adults across Chorley to engage in any kind of networking group. There's an internal group for members of the council. There's stuff going on in schools, but the vast majority of adults cannot engage with this at the moment, 2 years after that recommendation was made.
Sally, any comment to make, or Zoe?
Yeah, I think the only comment I would make, Chair, is it has been difficult because we've been through a pandemic and because Sally has only been in post a year and we've only just published our climate change strategy. You've seen from tonight's report that the breadth of the recommendations that Sally inherited when she was appointed a year ago, with no team around her, obviously support from myself as her line manager. So we spent that time really getting to grips with climate change and understanding, you know, the work that needs to be done, engaging with all of those partners. So whilst I accept your point, and we have done lots of work with engagement, particularly around schools and with various groups, the fact that we have a consultation out now on our strategy, I'm quite proud of that. I think we have done quite well to engage with members of the public. If the feedback comes back that there is an appetite for us to engage more closely with members of the public, then we'll certainly take that forward. But I do think, you know, going back to Sally's point earlier, that it is a small team at this stage. We've got Sally and then we've got a carbon and air quality officer. So we are limited in terms of, you know, the engagement activity that we can get involved with. We do have a communications strategy around climate change, and we are using social media a lot to try and reach out, promote, raise awareness, etc. But it is a moving feast, and we are willing to listen, and if there is an appetite for members of the public to get involved, then we can look at that and look at resourcing it. And obviously it's for members to help us as officers to resource things where there's an appetite and a demand from members of the public. So we're certainly willing to look at that going forward, and you know, we want to see what comes out of this consultation, and hopefully we will get quite a high level of engagement. I don't know, Sally, if you know the numbers yet in terms of the responses we've had.
No, about a week,
putting you on the spot. Not huge numbers as about a week ago, but we are trying to promote it as best we can. Thank you.
Any comments to make?
No, I mean, the consultation is great that's gone live, but I think it goes back to that initial recommendation of establish a networking group that's open to anyone, you know, not just schools or churches or particular groups of people, but you know, anybody who's interested in getting involved and moving this agenda forward should be able to.
Yes, can I just say that over the next few months, years, climate change will be high on the agenda for all the various committees and what have you, and it might well be to have a community forum somewhere on the line in the very near future as things progress. As you say, it's early days and it's not going to go away. So it'll have to be at the forefront of all the council's thinking anyway. So I'm certain the public will eventually get more involved. Anything further to say, Mr. Hunter? Okay.
I'll just add that offer to meet with Greenland and Jolly, I'm sure that still stands, and it'd be great if we could do that at some point.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Zoe.
Yeah, what I would say is we are willing to engage with that group, and you know, in terms of the future, I think there was a request made some months ago, and because we were in the process of developing a strategy, it wasn't felt it was timely. But certainly in the coming months, more than happy for Sally and I to come along to a meeting of that group to talk about the work that we're doing and to engage further.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Well, we'll look forward to the next reading of the climate consultation and everything else, really. But I'm certainly be in front of the Scrutiny Committee quite also over the next few years anyway. So thank you very much for attending tonight. We haven't much more to go on the agenda now, but if you want to depart, you can do with pleasure. Thank you. I don't think there's much else on our agenda, is it? Is it just the work programme? Right. I don't think, because this is the last meeting of the municipal year, that there's not a lot we can discuss really. I think we've got to leave it until the new committee is set up in July. There might be new members. Some of you might want not to be on the committee next year. That's up to you if you're not up for election anyway. So I'm not going to go into detail what we're going to do. We'll wait until the July meeting when we'll work out the work for the year, really. Okay. So I can all it remains for me to say is thank you very much for your efforts this year and cooperation. It hasn't been an easy year. We had the first couple of meetings in the Lancastrian when the sound system wasn't particularly good, and so it hasn't been an easy year. But thank you for your help, your patience, and everything else.